this Bible study of the Banking Blessings Ministry. My name is Goodluck Ofebu, and this is my wife.
Obi Ofebu.
We welcome you to our continuing study on husband-wife interactions, and today we look at an event in the life of Abraham and Sarah. We look at a challenge that occurred to them, and in fact a disagreement that they had and how they resolved the disagreement regarding Ishmael, and we will discuss the details as we go on. Honey, you want to say something to start? No. Okay, so we continue. As I said, what happened was in order to protect Isaac, Sarah demanded that Ishmael and her mother be sent away. Remember that her mother was, Ishmael's mother was Hagar, that Sarah allowed to have a child with Abraham. But now Isaac has been born, and we are doing a ceremony for Isaac, something like a birthday. It was a winning to celebrate his winning, kind of. He's living a certain stage in childhood. Then during that celebration, Sarah saw Ishmael say something that showed extreme hostility towards Isaac, and she decided that Ishmael and his mother had to be sent away. Well, this troubled Abraham because Ishmael was Abraham's child. Of course, not a child through Sarah, but his child, okay. So he was concerned, he was troubled. How could he send his son away? How could he banish his son? And how would he provide for the son? We'll see that God stepped in to resolve that conflict, and Sarah's demand was fulfilled, and Ishmael was not left alone. God provided for Ishmael. Our lesson will come from Genesis chapter 21, selections from Genesis chapter 21. Well, we'll begin with the birth of Isaac, which we know was a miracle because Sarah and Abraham were already very old. Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90. So there was they did not expect to have a child. In fact, when God told them they were going to have a child, both of them doubted. And we'll just go back, we've covered some of these before. We'll go back to see, to do some reading about the birth of Isaac. When the fact that Isaac would be born was revealed to Abraham. Abraham doubted it. And we'll see Sarah also had an opportunity and she doubted it as well. But here it has come through. They had a child at a time that nobody expected that they would have a child. And it was a miracle child. So let us read about the birth of Isaac from Genesis 21, 1 to 17. And then we'll go back to Genesis 17 to read about Abraham's doubt when the birth of Isaac was foretold. And then Genesis 18 to read about Sarah's doubt. Just to bring all of this together.
Genesis chapter 21 verse 1, reading from the New King James Version. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age, and at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac. Verse 4. Then Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Now Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made me laugh, and all who hear will laugh with me. She also said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? For I have borne him a son in his old age. Abraham
Well, so the next thing we're going to read is the Abraham's doubt. When the birth of Isaac was predicted to him, was foretold to him, he doubted, and in fact he offered God an alternative. We'll see about that. Let's proceed.
Chapter 17, verse 15. Genesis chapter 17, verse 15. Then God said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. And I will bless her and also give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall be from her. Then Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael may live before you.
Sarah also expressed doubt. Let's read the next section to see that. But you can see here that Abraham really doubted. He was, who wouldn't really doubt if you think about it? But this is one of the things we're going to discuss later, that when God makes you a promise, that you really should not think of it as impossible, because nothing is impossible with God. That's what happened here. But anyway, let us read about Sarah.
Genesis 18, verse 10. And he said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life, and behold, Sarah your wife shall have a son. Sarah was listening in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah had passed the age of childbearing. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, after I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? And the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh, saying, shall I surely bear a child since I'm old? Genesis 18, verse 14. Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. Verse 15. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, no, but you did laugh.
Okay, so that was about the birth of Isaac and some of the doubts that occurred. Let's not discuss that now. Let's try to focus on what happened after the birth of Isaac. Because when Isaac was about 2 years old, he was weaned, and the parents celebrated this. They called people together and made food, and just like a birthday party. But Sarah noticed Ishmael mocking Isaac, but saying something that doing something that appeared very unfriendly, very threatening. And Sarah was concerned. Now Ishmael was 14 years old, Isaac was only 2. How were these two going to grow together? And what kind of threat was Ishmael going to be to Isaac? And so Sarah didn't think that it was possible to bring these two people up together, and she demanded that Ishmael and his mother Hagar be sent away, so that Ishmael will never have opportunity to be a problem for Isaac. Let us read about this in Genesis chapter 21, verses 8 to 10.
Genesis 21, verse 8. So the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, scoffing. Therefore she said to Abraham, Cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, namely with Isaac.
So again, Sarah's demand was send Hagar away with Ishmael, to deny Ishmael any opportunity to become a problem to Isaac. Let us see what happened thereafter. This became a problem for Abraham, a real problem, that because Ishmael was his son, it's quite possible he agreed with Sarah that there was a potential problem, raising Isaac in the presence of Ishmael. But he wasn't comfortable sending Ishmael away because Ishmael was his son. Also, Sarah, he has never we've talked about the relationship between him and Sarah and how they are one in everything. So they are one so much that God would address them as one. God would just talk to Abraham as if he was talking to Abraham and Sarah. Now this problem has come up, and Abraham really didn't want to refuse Sarah this thing that she has asked for. But at the same time, he was not comfortable sending. He didn't want to send away his son, especially empty-handed. He was probably wondering, what can I do for him? Is there a way to settle him so that he can go? Or how do I do this? So he was troubled. God stepped in to resolve this, and this is really the lesson for this night. We're going to read this and then we'll discuss it a little more to understand, first of all, to see how God resolved it, and then to learn some lessons, to see what lessons we can draw from there. Genesis 21, verses 11 to 13.
Genesis 21, verse 11. And the matter was very displeasing in Abraham's sight because of his son. But God said to Abraham, Do not let it be displeasing in your sight because of the lad or because of your bondwoman. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice, for in Isaac your seed shall be called. Verse 13. Yet I will also make a nation of the son of the bondwoman, because he is your seed.
Well, we're going to read 12 and 13 again, but this time from the NIV. Just, we often don't do this, but we want to see. NIV always gives a softer translation of the Bible. So let us see what it says about this. Verse 12. Yeah.
But God said to him, Do not be so distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. Verse 13, I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring.
Okay, so God's resolution is this. He said, He told Abraham to accept what Sarah said. And to accept Sarah's demand. Sarah's demand is send Ishmael away with his mother Hagar. essentially remove them from the house, let them go somewhere else and live, let them go and set up their own home somewhere else, so that Isaac can grow up without them. So God told Abraham to accept that demand, but he addressed the issue that was bothering Abraham. Don't worry about Ishmael, because I'm going to provide for him too. And he told Abraham that Ishmael will become a nation, that he will become, there is more detail in the Bible that we didn't bring out. He will have several princes and all that, but we don't know the number. But essentially that Ishmael will be richly blessed, he will be provided for, that Abraham should not worry about his well-being, that he will be taken care of, that God will take care of him. But that it is in the interest of everybody, interest of Isaac, interest of Ishmael, interest of Abraham and his wife, to listen to what Sarah said and remove Ishmael and his mother from Abraham's household. Well, so it's not only that God instructed Abraham to resolve this issue, but in this particular case it was so difficult, the problem was so difficult, that God provided a solution. If you look at the nature of his solution, the solution he provided, you see that in a way he's teaching us something there about conflict resolution. See, Abraham and Sarah had that conflict. Sarah demanded that this Ishmael and his mother be sent away. Abraham was troubled, was not going to agree to send him away. That was, well, we don't know what he was going to do, but he was troubled about it. But God determined that what Abraham was really troubled about was the well-being of Ishmael. It's not sending him away wasn't the problem, but how could he just throw his son out of the house without providing for him? How would, say, a 14-year-old boy, his mother probably didn't have much by herself, so how would this boy be provided for? So what God did was to solve that problem and said, look, this boy is provided for. He has his own inheritance. I've already done this for him, and this is what he's going to get. The lesson there being that in order to resolve a conflict, at times you need to look beyond the basic disagreement sort of, and find out what really is the problem. What will satisfy? What is it that concerns the disputants? So Abraham's concern was about the well-being of Ishmael, and God provided for the well-being of Ishmael. There is a bigger lesson here also about a substantial conflict between husband and wife. Remember, God saw Abraham and Sarah. We've gone through maybe 2 or 3 lessons in which we learned that God saw Abraham and Sarah as one. And this oneness was developed because of the bond between them, the fact that they've known each other practically all their life, and they've been together so long, they clung to each other, and for them, nothing mattered. Nothing else mattered more than the strength of the bond between them, and they won't let anything come between them. But this issue of Ishmael was going to come between them. It was a potentially dividing disagreement. It's a disagreement that will interfere with their oneness. And a lesson we draw from here is that God is telling us that when there is an issue between husband and wife that threatens their oneness, their feeling of oneness, it's not regular, household disagreement, where did you put the toothpaste, did you finish the soap without telling me? those are not dividing disagreements. But this is a dividing disagreement. Send this boy away with his mother. And this boy is my son. How can I do this? What's going to? So it's a potentially dividing disagreement, one that will interfere with their oneness. And if it's still unresolved, then the question would be, what will happen to them thereafter? And how will God relate to them? Because they could no longer be one as long as this disagreement was between them. So God instructed Abraham to resolve this disagreement quickly, and seeing that there is an issue that Abraham couldn't understand, couldn't see, because Abraham didn't know what was going to be given to Ishmael, what Ishmael was going to become. So he didn't have the benefit of using that to resolve the problem. God resolved it himself by saying, look, don't worry, I have provided for this boy. So the main lesson that we draw from this is, one, if there is a potentially dividing disagreement between husband and wife, they need to resolve it immediately, because it would interfere with their oneness. It would interfere with their interaction with God. God wants to interact with husband and wife as one. And any disagreement that interferes with their spirit of oneness needs to be resolved, not only quickly, but permanently. Needs to be resolved the way that God resolved the issue with Ishmael, quickly and permanently.
Yeah. I don't know. This is, the Holy Spirit is always, he said that he teaches us all things. God has sent him to teach us all things. So, like we often say, you can read the same portion of the Bible, the same verse, and then each time, there's something new that God wants to bring out through this. The story of Sarah and Abraham, or Abraham and Sarah, with Ishmael and Hagar, is something that, every believer, and even those who are not believers, it's a very popular event, event line in the Bible. But today, as I often say, the things that the Holy Spirit drop in my mind as we prepare or present this is what I always like to share with the audience. And these are really like practicalities of how these things affect us, life application of some of these things. And the first thing that comes to my mind, or rather that was laid in my heart as my husband presented this, was that we know that Isaac is the child of promise. Remember, Sarah and Abraham wanted to help God, and that's why they said, Hagar. Sarah said, go unto my husband, and all that. Even with their doubts, God still specifically told them and said, no, Sarah, I will give you a child through Sarah. And so that's the child of promise. But Ishmael was there. So Ishmael started mocking the child of promise. What came to my mind is sometimes in our lives, we look at those things that look as if they are the main thing, they are the real thing, they are the real deal. And maybe we are not sure, or God still finds a way to keep his covenant and gives us what is the real deal. You say, okay, well, I've made that mistake, or well, the two can go hand in hand, grow hand in hand. But you can't mix the child of promise with the mocker, with the mockery of it. The two cannot coexist. It does not matter. We might be looking at it like, why couldn't Hagar, why couldn't Sarah Sarah was unaccommodating. But that's really not the spiritual thing there. The two, you must separate the two. So that the child of promise will grow the way that God has wanted it. Let's take for example, Ishmael and Isaac they grow together then. This one will keep doing, I'm your older brother. When it comes to the issue of maybe inheritance and all that, I'm the elder one, so I'm the one to inherit this and all that and all that. And it could derail the promise that God has made through Isaac. What God wanted to bring through Isaac. Yeah. It could derail it, or it could, contaminate it. There needed to be a separation. You cannot, it's like saying, you cannot serve God and Mammon. And for God knows that, hey, this is a child, and this is Abraham's child. But God did not mince words by saying, listen to your wife Sarah and do as she has said. Because he knows that you cannot contaminate the promise. You can't something could happen. Look at the case of Jacob and Esau. As things went and stuff like that. So those things, sometimes there are things in our lives that look like, hey, it's something, this thing I really can't do it. It might look to you like unfair. It might look like this, but you have to let it go. And there are so many examples like that in our lives. Sometimes, and this one is so real. Sometimes as parents, we want the best for our children, and then we are seeing this child, misbehaving, and look at the case of the prodigal son and all that, and then we are constantly before God asking God, do this, do that, and all that. And then sometimes God said, look, you have to let go so that I can straighten this child out. And sometimes the covenant, we make covenants with God, and we might say, God, but you told me my covenant with you is that you're going to help, my children will be this, my children will be that, as long as I serve you and I do this. And they're watching these children, they are not anything near what you think God, what you think that, will become of them. And God says, let them go. Give way. And you're saying, no, but how can they? They're going to suffer, they're going to do this. But God took care of Ishmael. And he took care of Ishmael not because of sentiment. I want us to look at this very well. It's not because of sentiment that he took care of. He settled Ishmael. He said, because he is your offspring. Yeah. And God had made a promise, a covenant with Abraham about concerning the offspring. Yeah. He said, I will make him, he will also be a great nation because he is your offspring. So sometimes once we have that covenant and you have that covenant with God, it doesn't matter what it looks like. We have to find a way to let go and believe God. That is one thing. Another thing is, God is a covenant keeper. He's a keeper of covenant. So it doesn't matter what stands in the way of the covenant. For as long as you keep your own part, God will keep his own part. It does not matter what stands in the way of keeping that covenant. That is why Ishmael had to go. If it was possible to send Ishmael away and probably leave Hagar and all that, but then, the Bible doesn't tell us what will happen. But the important thing was that Ishmael had to be separated from Isaac. And for God's covenant to manifest, God's covenant to Abraham through Isaac. Okay? Now, the last thing I that was laid in my heart is, remember the role of influence we always talk about with women. Abraham could never on his own have imagined that he would send his son away, Ishmael. It could never have occurred to him. Even if they were fighting every day and Ishmael was, mocking or whatever, as a father he would not see that. But God spoke through Sarah. Why do I know that God spoke through Sarah? Because God told Abraham, listen to your wife Sarah, whatever she said you should do, do it. If it was not God saying that through Sarah, he would have found a way to say, no, Sarah is wrong, don't do this. But he said, do it. That means it is God's mandate, which he propagated through Sarah. We might be saying that, oh, they were mocking Sarah, whatever, but God spoke through Sarah. So also can God speak through the woman. And I've often said we should use this very, very, very carefully. If we use it effectively, we will see that the family will be better off. If we don't use it effectively, then it can also destroy the family. And one example that I had with what I spoke about earlier about letting go, and this happens to us as Africans a lot. We have extended family. We have in our culture, we care a lot about extended family. Not just the nuclear family, extended family. So sometimes the mother will come and live with the couple, or the father, or the sisters, or the brothers, and there will be so much strife in the home emanating from these relationships being around. And then sometimes you'll be, honey, whether it's your mother or the man's mother, your mom has to leave. So that, you say, how can my mother leave my house? How can my sister leave my house? But the way God has ordained it is the couple first. And sometimes we need to listen and let the parents give way on both sides. Give way for a time being. And maybe things will settle. But let's not bring the issue of sentiment and say, this is my sister. You don't want them around. This is my brother. This is my mother. How can I tell my mom to leave? This one is his son. He told his son and the woman that gave birth to the son to leave. It pained him, but it had to be for God's covenant to him to manifest unhindered through Isaac. So these are some of the things that we should look at, some of the lessons we see in this interaction, that if we apply to our own lives, it will all go well for us as families. But we should prayerfully seek the face of God before we do anything.
Okay, and that actually brings us to the end of a very focused lesson, and we thank you for being with us, for interacting with us. Let me end the slide first. We pray that what you learn from our program, from our website, from our live videos, and from all the information, everything we have is available through our website. And we pray that what you learn from it will make a positive impact in your life and will bring you closer to God's purpose for your life. Thank you for being our partner. May God bless you.
God bless you.